Sounds great.
Welcome to Numinous Vision. Numinous Vision's new program on shamanism. Our, facilitator is Natasha, and she's from USA, and she's a great host, and she have authentic experience in shamanism. So I'm handing over this session to her to make all the participants experience the truth of shamanism. Thank you.
Hi, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining me this morning. And yes, I have been working with shamanism, I would say traditionally since about 2012. And what I discovered with that is that I had been doing it intuitively. Hi, Raquel. For basically my whole life. And what shamanism is really to me is it's an alchemical practice. And I know that can sound kind of like lofty when you think of it that way, but in a really practical sense, it's a practice that allows you to really learn how to work with your emotions and with energy in a way that you can tangibly change your life. So it might sound really lofty, but it's actually a very like practical kind of thing and creates tangible results in your life. And so a little bit of what I want to start with and share today is that a kind of understanding that shamanism is an innate gift that's within all of us. And what I mean about this is that throughout the ages, there's been a collective understanding that behind the visible and logical world, there exists a deeper reality. And that's what I personally define as the feminine dimension. And so this feminine dimension of consciousness has also been called the other world, the spirit world, the real world, the Tao, many names. And its essence, though, always remains the same across all time and cultures. And this is the realm where the logical, the rational, the masculine dimension, the one that we are often operating from, it surrenders to the realm of the mother consciousness. And so this is the space where the subconscious and the dream begin to enter into a shared collective space. And it's an archetypical space and it communicates in symbology. And if you start to hear what I'm saying, it's starting to feel a little bit like, oh, wait, what's that place like when we sleep that we go to with dream? And yes, that is what I'm pointing to. This space is the most direct connection that a lot of us have. And so this shamanic spiritual process correlates to the domain of quantum physics. And so what that means is that this is the space where all the known laws of science break down into a sea of unpredictable quantum fluctuations at the root of physical existence. And what we understand from this space that it's actually the observer, us being the observer, that eventually collapses the possibilities and creates a reality based on the energetic stream that we decide to focus on. This is where a lot of mindset work starts to come in. And so this is also the space where we enter what I would call the birthing gate of matter, literally where we start to work with the creation. And so being in our mother's womb, experiencing the mystical alchemical transmutation of spirit actually becoming matter is our first experience of shamanism, womb consciousness, which is embodied in this earthly realm. And so this is literally, it's a gift innate to both of us, to all of us in the world. This is literally how we enter into the world. And so this gift is within us to basically go into this like kind of void and dream space within us and to rebirth ourselves. And the mystery of human gestation, which is hidden from sight and in the dark womb, the belly of the mother, this is the origin of the universal alchemical notion that most of the powerful magic occurs in the occult or in a hidden process, which is centered into the womb. And so what we mean here is a lot of times when we're working with shamanism and shamanic ritual is we're entering into this void space, this uterus, this place of birthing. And so as we enter through life, we also go through periods of rebirthing. As we grow, we begin to learn that things, ways that we used to be, no longer work. And so it's that same idea that just like once we were in the womb and we were birthed into creation, as we move on into life, we have this access to this shamanic place, this ritual womb space, where we literally go into ourselves and we are allowed to dissolve and become something new. And so in this unseen darkness of the womb cauldron, that's where a fetus grows, and it becomes to journey and become a human and a being and express itself. And so I love sharing this because I often feel like when people hear the word shamanism, they often think of some magical healer that's going to come and like, that's not what this is about. Yes, it's a beautiful thing to, if you're new to these practices, if you don't understand what's happening, to find someone that feels like you resonate with, that understands how to navigate these realms, because there is a lot that's happening in these spaces and misinterpretation is common. But one of the things I really want to share is that this is an innate capacity that exists in all beings, and we all have the ability to access this space and to work with it. And literally every night when we go into the dream space, that is an opportunity to work with your own kind of shamanism, and to see what that information reveals to you. Another thing that I love to share is that scientific research now confirms that our time that we spend gestating in the womb is a literal dream time state. It's an other world state. It's deep inside of the womb consciousness, and it sets up an imprint in both the spiritual and biological of how our external lives will unfold. And so this again is what it means, is like this time that we spend in the womb where we're imprinted, with everything that's coming through our genetics, it's literally where we as a fetus are dreaming and creating our life. And what I love about, when this kind of notion really sinks in, is that it really allows you to realize the power that we have as a being to dream and create something new.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when a baby's consciousness comes online, it's a perceptual intelligence. And so what that means is that the cerebral cortex of the brain, which oftentimes that's what we refer to as left side and right side brain, which then a lot of times too, there's this association that the left side brain is the masculine and the right side brain is the feminine. And that's also a misconception. The right and the left side brain can actually adopt either masculine or feminine qualities. But the cerebellum, which is the backside of the brain, the reptilian brain, as we like to call it, this is actually where this is a completely just feminine consciousness space. There is no language, there is symbols, and the cerebellum, what it communicates with the most is what's called our enteric nervous system, which is literally our gut, which is located in what I like to call the space in our body of the womb chakra space. And so that space is literally communicating to our cerebellum and our brain all the time, giving us information about what is happening around us. And, giving what we like to call that gut instinct, that those feelings we get of like, oh, this is a yes for me, this is a no for me. And so that information is really important. It comes from that same space, that connection, which links us into the shamanic realm. And so why I like to point this out about how the baby's perception is formed is because this perception that a baby has while in the womb is extremely similar to what we experience as a fully developed being when we are either in a dream state or in altered states of consciousness. And so this can be through shamanic journeying, trance states, the use of entheogens and plant medicines, an experience of ecstasy, or religious rapture. And so oftentimes we hear of these experiences where people are in either a sexual experience and it's just this divine ecstasy, or just an experience of really feeling in that flow, perhaps through a creation of art, or a kind of a religious experience that really in essence is an expanded state of consciousness that we are able to have access to, where it's just the flow of information that's really able to clearly move through us. And so, in essence, what I really want to share is that the shaman is the dreamer, and it is that expanded consciousness and our ability to connect with that space and entering like state, which is available to all of us at any time, that is really at the core of shamanism. And when we want to look at what some of the gifts of shamanism, it's this ability to return to this primal consciousness, to reclaim the extraordinary capacities that we naturally possess in the womb, access to. And so the Akashic Records is not necessarily, it's kind of like this etheric space that the idea is we all collectively have access to this space known as the Akashic Records, where literally all information is stored, all access is there. So anything that a human being has entered into their consciousness and really embodied is anchored in that space. And since we're all this kind of collective unit of being information, when we allow ourselves to be in this state of connection with our shamanic gifts. Some other gifts that come through are memories of the past or co-emergent lives. And that's where you might see a lot of people doing past life regression work or really tuning into alternate timelines where like there's this sense of like, there's something going on here that's affecting me in this life. And I don't really understand what it is. And so having that information and access to that can be really supportive for making sense with what energies you're working in your current incarnation and to really keep you anchored and focused on what it is that you're doing here in the present moment. It also gives us our connection to multidimensional realms and interplanetary memories. And that's one that I can definitely speak to as well, where I have really been able to connect with many dimensions and realms through my ability to connect with this dreamlight state. And it's pretty cool and it's fun and it gives me a lot of information and I overall just really enjoy it. And I find that it has been very supportive in guiding my intuition and leading me into what is right for my personal life experience and leading me to more joy and happiness.
Natasha, to interfere, can you hear me? So
yes, I can hear you.
Ask the first question. You can answer it now or afterwards. Just as a reminder, the first question. The person who want to start his or her shamanic journey, what is the first thing to do with? How somebody can start their shamanic journey? This question, you keep it in your bag. I mean, when the right times, you can answer it. And if somebody have some questions, they can raise their hand or I will unmute them. Then they can, we have more participants coming up. Yeah, please continue.
Yeah, absolutely. And well, I hope that what people will take away from this experience and the answer to that question is that journey started the moment you entered your mother's womb. You're already on the journey.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I think it's more so understanding that this is a journey we are already on. We all have a connection experience here. I think a lot of times we have this idea that these things are outside of us. And I'm really here to show like that's not the case. And that's why there's a sense of not being able to understand. Because of course it's hard to understand when you're looking at something from the outside and it's actually inside of you. And so genetic shape-shifting abilities that allow us to embody connection with the different animal races of the earth, that allow us to really connect in and learn how to care for the other beings that are on this planet is an innate gift that we will also begin to have active shamanic consciousness online, we dream and trance-like state, to really begin to notice the synchronicities in life and the spaces where the other world is always communicating to us, as well as if you're beginning to start to work with practitioners who have made it their passion to go into these spaces and support other people in very intentional rituals that can really create healing opportunities or potentials for creation. It allows you to connect with your innate knowing and a deep connection with cosmic wisdom. And most importantly, it allows you to retain a deeply felt, embodied umbilical cord connection with creator and creation. And I think that this is the one that for most of us, we really feel that disconnection, and it's really challenging in life, where we do feel cut off from being connected with creator and the fact that we are also creators and that creation flows through us and that there is no separation, because it is a great pain to think that there is a separation. And I think that pain is by design to kind of remind us and push us forward in our kind of shamanic journey of light of you. And so I want to speak to you a little bit about now when you're starting to work more with shamanic ritual, because while shamanism itself is something that is an innate quality, it's a magic that exists in us all, like anything, the potentiality is there, but it needs to be activated. And in order to utilize it, you really want to know the best ways to do that. And so with shamanic ritual, it utilizes imagination, visualization, conscious intention, movement, breath, and sound. And so what that means is those are basically like the ingredients and the recipe that's going to create what can be a shamanic ritual. And so when you start to look at that, you start to realize that shamanic rituals are happening all the time. A concert, for example, shamanic ritual. There is movement, there is sound, there is intention, there's a visualization that it's happening. This is a shared experience where people are coming together. And so, you know, we've heard a lot of Christians, they get really uncomfortable because Christianity is very aware of shamanic ritual. And so they see when it's happening. And I think it's beautiful, actually, that in essence, what they're trying to let people know is like, hey, like, be aware of what you're stepping into. Like, it's not like, stop, don't do that, this is a dangerous thing, but it's more so like, hey, be aware that when you are connected and in these spaces, you are in essence a part of a shamanic ritual. And make sure that the energy that you're interacting is really one that you want to be a part of and moving forward. And so this is the idea. Sometimes we hear, you know, separating the art from the artist. And that's never made any sense to me, because I'm like, how can you do that? The energy is the same. And I think that's just something to really keep into consideration. And if it brings things up for you, beautiful. That is your work. That is exactly where you need to explore to see what that is revealing to you in your journey and where you can stay more in alignment with your own personal soul integrity. And what we do then, as we utilize these things, it creates a kind of trance dreamlike state. And in the example of like a concert, for example, it's like a big collective experience. So it's really like potent and powerful. It's like a shared experience. And honestly, I feel like many concerts and many beings that have kind of stepped into that realm and just kind of really coming from a place of like, hey, I'm just sharing my passion and my love and I want to uplift people. I think that has drastically changed the world, because that's what we get to have now with technology and just the reach that we have. And so that's some of the things that I've been seeing where I'm like, oh, shamanism is everywhere and it's in the modern world. And if you don't know what you're looking at, you might miss it, but it's right there everywhere. And once again, I wanted to speak to the fact that it's a form of alchemical ritual. And so what that means is that it's about transforming an energetic state to another state. It's harmonizing vibrations. It's this idea of transforming like base lead into gold. And so when we're speaking to this, and when we think back of like what alchemists were speaking of when they wanted to make lead into gold, it's the speaking of an energetic experience. And the speaking of taking like what we have inside of us, and oftentimes that can feel like lead, and choosing to utilize that through movement, through sound, through whatever ways that allow your body to feel good, and literally transform that energy into a gold, something that feels good, something that allows you to pursue what you want to do. And so we understand on a conceptual level that energy is neither created or destroyed, that it's either transferred or transformed. And so I really love to share this and bring people to the awareness that how that affects us as a society is that we have been taught to interact with each other in ways that is a transfer of energy. And on top of that is that we very much have this transactional way that we have all been taught as a society to interact with each other. That means you give me love, I give you love. You give me hate, I give you hate. You give me pain, I give you pain. But all that does is create this never ending cycle of just circling back the same thing, which is lovely if you're circling love. But then some of us kind of realize, like, oh, you know what? That love place feels really nice. And so we start to think, well, wait, what happens if we just stay here? And that's where we start to get somewhere, because then you start to realize that your life doesn't have to be transactional. You start to realize that you can take in. Can you still hear me? My headphones just died. The volume switched out. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you. Yeah.
There we go. Is that okay? Is that better?
Yes.
The volume is okay now.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Okay, beautiful. And so basically what that means then is it allows you to come to this state of being where, in essence, whatever anyone brings your way, pain, suffering, love, doesn't matter. It's all the same thing. It just becomes this energy that you take in and you move through your energetic system. And because you're anchored in it, I want to give unconditional love at all times, regardless of what comes to me. Then that's all that you express out. So literally everything that comes your way, out just comes love. And so I'm a being that I'm curious, what happens if we keep doing that? And there are some other beings, I think, that have been asking that question. And I think maybe if you're on this call and listening to me, you might be one of them. And so shamanic ritual and working with somatic practices, I find, is a really beautiful way to anchor and then connect with that. And I think for me, that's all I had kind of written that I wanted to make sure I shared.
So about shamanic rituals.
Yeah, I'd love.
Yeah, about shamanic rituals, most of the ancient religions, the very old religions, have its own way of shamanic rituals. So in Hinduism, the aboriginals or the tribal people, from them, they worship nature as their form of truth, and they have their own way of worshipping it. So like that, in North America, they have their own way. If you can share something on your own experience, how the aboriginals or the first generation people, modern shamanism we can see everywhere, but when we travel or when we really go into the deep experiences of meeting the real people, so do you have any such kind of experience? I saw such kind of versions related to Hinduism, and the very aboriginal, even they may not have any literature and all, but they are real authentic practitioners and powerful practitioners because they follow the system which was transmitted through generations. So in Hinduism, there are people who practice such kind of shamanic practice, which they transfer to the next generation, it moves like that. If you have such kind of experience, I love to listen to that.
Yes, and is there a specific question that you have on that, or just you're curious
So
about my personal experience?
how this shamanic wisdom get transferred from one generation to other? It start from a long way, how we don't know how long it was there, but it transferred from one generation to other. How this wisdom get transferred? Yeah.
I mean, at the core, I think it's always going to be the answer is it comes from literally inside of us in that womb consciousness. I think it's a like almost frustrating thing for our mind because our mind always wants to be like, but where, but why, and how do we track it? And it's one of those things that it's an innate wisdom and understanding that is literally birthed through us. And then as humans, we go through this experience of like this idea, this intuition, it comes through and out of us. Like this is the birthplace of where these practices came from. These practitioners that many of them associated themselves with the womb were some of the earliest practitioners of alchemy practices that I'm aware of. Really kind of mothers, a lot of times, were the innate connections, as well as those that connected with like the sexual priestess practices and things like that. They had this connection where they were in prayer, they were in meditation, and this innate wisdom came up and through. And then through that, just as humans have done throughout time, we figured out ways information. And a lot of information has actually been lost. And that's where I think now what we're experiencing is kind of this resurgence of like, we have many of these ancient texts, we have much of this information, but it's still a half information. Half of the information feels like it has been lost through space and time. And that's the thing, is like that information is what's being birthed inside people that are starting to become interested and starting to work with these practices. And at the end of the day, we can talk about it all day, but that's an anthropological practice or study. If you want to understand and have the experience, it's about actually starting to dive in and see what it's like to be in that experience of shamanism. What I do love about some of the ancient practices, especially if you're starting out as a beginner, is that these are a beautiful place to start, because you're going to have lots of guidance. You're going to have people that have been working in this realm that really understand. Like it can be quite a lot to navigate. And so going through with ancient practices that have really stood the test of time, that there's continual energy that's been poured into these practices, also creates just like this continual momentum of energy that also allows the practices to really become very powerful. And so that's why you notice when we step into, sorry, I have sounds coming from my computer. I can't mute right now.
Yeah, we have 8 more minutes remaining. If any other people have any questions, I will unmute everybody. So so they can ask their questions. So if any of us have any more questions, so they can ask. Yeah. Any questions?
Hello?
Yes. Yes, please.
So I guess my question is it possible to like pursue shamanism or healing? Like I do believe that you can do a lot of healing with others and like through community, and you can like make leaps and bounds, but I haven't had like a personal teacher, because like I recognize that everything is my teacher. So I don't really have like a like a guru or a shaman that I learn from directly. But I am told sometimes that like that is needed for me to receive, I guess, like
yeah, your question is, to be precisely, your question is, do we need a teacher to start the journey of shamanism? That is a question. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, pretty much.
Yes.
So no, because we don't need anything outside of ourselves. But what I will say is that I personally think the act of getting what I would call a teacher or guide, that resonates more for me in terms of who I work with. I think it's an act of self-love. Because absolutely, you can do it on your own, you can figure it out, and it'll take you as long as it takes. And if you decide that you want to have some support of people that have gone before you, that understand what the journey can entail, because it's got many twists and turns, and you want to do that with a little more softness and love and self-care, I would definitely advise looking into that. Because what I find is that when you're on a do it yourself, it can be really painful. And a lot of times that is also a sign of kind of old trauma wounds coming up around not being able to have that sense of trust in your discernment and being able to select and choose individuals to support you who are really on your team and able to guide you and support you in a way that can help you thrive. Was that
Great.
supportive?
Yes.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you.
Yes, that's the right answer. That's where, organizations like Numinous Wishes come into play. So it's not about one teacher giving away their knowledge and keeping their students to themselves. Like Numinous Wishes try to create more programs so that people can come from different walk of life, and they don't need to spend all their life, but they can come, take away some experience and practice in their life, and experience through their practices. This is what we are intended to do, and we have further programs coming up in next year too, so we welcome all. And I think in next 4 minutes we need to wind up. So Natasha, if you have something more to add on, please.
I feel like actually these next few minutes, I'd love to actually just take us into some embodiment, and I would love to actually just end with that and like not come back into communication, just let everyone kind of leave the space and conversation to make connected with themselves and their bodies.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'd just like to invite everyone to close their eyes. Allow themselves to tune in, notice the present inside of themselves. Notice it. Notice it in a way where your brain is describing the sensations that you're feeling and wherever it is that you're noticing in your body. And just sending a little love to that space with your breath. Not pushing, not forcing, but just allowing. Seeing if you can begin to notice the breath as it begins to enter the mouth and the nose. And just receiving that breath. And taking a moment here, just maybe to begin to notice if there are any spaces inside of you or feeling a little discomfort or pain, tension, whatever. And so just for a moment, I want you to really notice that space, to bring your awareness to that space with curiosity. And I want you to just imagine yourself sitting down next to that space inside of you and just meeting it as you would a friend and taking a breath. And just letting that sensation, that space in your body, know that you're there. Don't try to change it. Don't try to fix it. Don't even try and get it to talk to you yet. Just want you, just for a moment, just to let it know that you're there. You're present and you're listening. And then just take a breath for a moment and see what happens as that part of you starts to notice that you're there and that you're sitting there with it, noticing. You can see if there's particular sound or movement that now wants to come through. As you just breathe into those spaces within. And now I do want you to communicate with that space inside you just a little bit. I want you to let that space know, just through your mind, communicating directly from your heart. Let that space inside of you know, I'm here, I'm present,
What is it you want me to know? And now I want you to just listen. And I want you to just listen for as long as it takes. And what that means is, yeah, you might get a response within the next minute and 15 seconds that we're here. But also you might not. Maybe your body needs a little bit more time than that to communicate with you. And so what I want to offer to you in this space today is just whatever space in the body that you're communicating, just give it some time to see what it wants to reveal to you. What you can give yourself to let that part of you feel good and nourished. Just continuing to breathe into that space and just softening and just giving as much space as it needs to reveal whatever it is you need today.